of Ancient America, the Dark Side, and researcher. Please welcome to the show, Fritz Zimmerman. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Shane. Good seeing you again.
Say absolute pleasure. After the last conversation we got into, you kind of left some loose ends on some stuff that you were going to be getting into last time. So I'm hoping we can dive into some of that stuff a bit today, along with you said you have a new book in the works and a lot of new research that you've been working on.
Well, my latest book is Ancient America, the Dark Side, and we go into the paranormal and the ancient earthworks, which is a completely different field. And we're going to talk about one thing that I did a deep dive on in this book, and that is the mathematics and sacred geometry of the Newark earthworks.
So I don't know where exactly you would like to start. I don't know if everybody listened to the last conversation, but I don't know if you want to lay down some of the groundwork that kind of led into where you are currently with the research. But wherever you want to start today, completely up to you, sir.
Well, okay, let me just give like a little breakdown of majority of the book, but we're going to talk about just a sideline about fallen angels and how they're associated with the Ohio earthworks and so much as sacred geometry and all that. But um, this book was the culmination of many years of for the Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley, and Nephilim Chronicles, a travel guide to the ancient ruins in the Ohio Valley. I had traveled, for the travel guide to 700 mountain earthwork sites in Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, and some in Michigan. And, it's by far, the largest, photo library with directions to all these burial mounds and earthworks in those states. But in doing so, there were sites that I went to like Fort Hill and some others where I had paranormal experiences. At Fort Hill, I had seen a shadow person up there. And subsequently someone contacted me, and they had seen a shadow person at Fort Hill. And it just so happens we were standing at the same spot. They had seen it outside of the earthwork. Well, stonework. It's a stone wall, a serpentine stone wall that goes around this thing. So they had seen it the same spot that I had. And, there's that. And there's other people that grew up, with a mound across the street or a mound on their property. And they talk about disembodied voices. They talk about UFOs. They talk about shadow people, about strange noises and, just the complete gamut of paranormal experiences. So I accumulated all those and typed them up. So I share those people's paranormal experiences along with my own in this book. And it's important to note that I think we talked last time about giants, and I wrote the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, and how many of them are there in the Ohio Valley and how they're associated with these geometric earthworks. But in the book of Enoch, it says of these giants that their spirits shall be earthbound. And so when you go to some of these sites, um, they are what we say is charged, means there's a spirits there. And so you may or may not encounter them, but a lot of people have. Even with UFOs, of one person not only had his tale about UFOs at the Serpent Mound, but he had photographs of what he saw of these lights that were flying around it, followed by Apache helicopters that were trying to find it, that were probably coming out of Dayton, from I think that's, yeah, Grissom over there. So anyway, I mean that's it. And then I tried to tie these earthworks to Babylon, and the Babylonians, and more specifically, the Amorites. And the Amorites were the accounted giants in the Bible who actually controlled Babylon from 2000 BC to 1600 BC and were noted for their advanced mathematics that they have found on their tablets, which included pi and square root, trigonometry, and all of that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight.
So I guess with a lot of this stuff, it seems like it's almost like the chicken or the egg type of scenario where it's like, did the phenomenon start coming because of these things being built there, or were these things built there because there was weird phenomenon going on? I guess with your research, I don't know if you'll ever necessarily find a distinct answer to that, but it seems like it's a common trope with a lot of these like high strangeness places that I'm always just curious if what came first. Was it the fact that the land had something going on, or was it that something was built there and now something's going on in the land?
Probably the latter.
But see, at least with the Nephilim stuff, uh, I'd love to kind of hear some of the connections that you made for this stuff because obviously a lot of people dive into this stuff from like the ancient mound builder perspective. And I know last time we started touching base a little bit on the whole idea of like the biblical giants being the ones that were actually building these mounds. So
Mhm.
I'd love to hop in and kind of continue on with where you're at with this research and investigating this.
Well, I go, into that and all the ties and all the evidence in Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. Now, not only do we have sacred geometry, we also have a codex, a numerical codex, in the measure of these geometric earthworks. In Charleston, West Virginia, are two hinges. This hinge is a circular earthwork with a interior ditch and an outer wall, and a gateway that aligns to a solar event. And you all know Stonehenge. You know the stones in the middle, but around Stonehenge is an earthwork, and it has an interior ditch, circular interior ditch, outer wall, and the gateway to Stonehenge is the September, or not September, the summer solstice sunset. So that's where that's aligned. In Charleston, the two hinges there are aligned to the summer and winter solstices, and those are 666 feet. And like, well, mound builders had feet, and it's like, yes, they did. The foot did not come from England; it's an ancient measure. We believe that the Babylonians were using it, and there was a professor from MIT, and he believed that the mound builders in the Ohio Valley were, in fact, using the foot. And one indication of that, the Babylonians used 666 was a number for the sun. It wasn't anything having to do with the devil or anything. It was a number used for the sun. Actually, in the Bible, I believe it's in Chronicles, Solomon was brought 666 talons of gold. Well, if you look at the name of Solomon, Sol, of course, son, Am is Hindi for son, and An is the Egyptian word for son. So the name Solomon itself is son three times. Another person in the Bible with 666 attached to his name was Adonakam, which is in reference to Adonis, which again is a sun deity. And with him, there were 666 people that were fleeing from Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar. So we have a couple instances in the Bible where 666 associated with the sun. And then for the lunar or earth mother, we have the number 1080. And that is a Babylonian number that is used also in that regards, but it is somewhat tied to 666 because if you double 1080, you get 2160, and always 216 is of interest because 216 is the sum total of 6 times 6 times 6. Now, we have those two earthworks in Charleston that are 666. We also have a hinge in Kentucky. But I just found I was listening to a guy today on L.A. Marzulli's podcast, and he has proven that the circumference of the Marietta burial mound that has a earthen moat or ditch around it, very much like you would find in England. But the circumference of that is 666 feet. So we have this numerical codex of gematria that was being used in not only the Bible but the Babylonians, and it's showing up in it shows up in the Ohio Valley in the measure of the mounds or the earthworks. More so, now we found one mound there at Marietta that's 666. So while that's the numerology, what we'll talk a little bit about tonight is the sacred geometry of the earthworks, and more particular, we're just going to look at one site, and that's Newark, Ohio.
Before we hop into this one, just out of curiosity, I'm sure that you've dived into the whole Tesla idea about the importance of the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And you had mentioned, of course, the 666, which of course or would have the six entail for that. But you also mentioned the 1080. And if you do like the straight line across, you'd have the 1080. So that would be 9. So you'd have the 6 and the 9 right there. So just out of curiosity, from your research dealing with some of these numbers, have you noticed any of these like reoccurring patterns with 3, 6, and 9? Because it seems like there's something that has to do with like pitch, frequency, vibration, and I feel like it goes into these. I guess you could say more like portal ideas on things. So everybody's still trying to unlock what the secret is of this exactly. But have you noticed like a reoccurring thing with the numbers 3, 6, and 9 throughout your research too?
Well, the Babylonians used a base 12 numerical system. So base 12, so you're going to get sixes and nine are all going to be divisible. Within every earthwork in the Ohio Valley is divisible by 3, 6, and 12. So there might be something to that. And, I was told years ago that at Yellow Springs, Ohio, a guy was doing something similar like to what you're talking about. He called it harmonic resonance or something. So what he was doing, he was throwing a sound at this burial mound, and he said he would stop and then the mound would duplicate it back to him. And that was just sounded crazy to me. But I don't know. The guy seemed legit. But he was saying that, he was just getting started on these experiments of, yeah, actually shooting noise into the mounds, and that they were replaying them. So there might be something to that. But that would be all the information I have on it.
I mean, just to continue that thought too, before we hop into the next bit of the discussion here, one thing that I've been seeing recently that I find pretty fascinating is this idea about where people are taking like these ancient I guess that you could say like markings on walls. And they're figuring out that they actually make sound when they start rubbing stone on them. Like they start making these different pitches and vibrations and frequencies. And it almost kind of sounds like a song or something. Have you noticed any spots in any of these earthworks or stoneworks, particularly, that seem like there might be something to it? Where you can rub a rock on some of these walls, and it might you know create some type of pitch or frequency or something with this, because I feel like this might be a key component with a lot of these ancient structures, that maybe there's something that's intended to be like you were mentioning with this guy that was shooting sounds on him and it reverberating back. Like I feel like there's got to be more dynamic with this stuff and other ways that we can kind of do some tests and experiments on this stuff.
Well, I would agree. And, we were going to shoot Ancient Paranormal this last winter. And, we got a really good start and had some interesting. We had done 3 trips. We were basically around Newark, and then one trip, close to Newark at Cedarville. And Yellow Springs is pretty close. That was like a weekend, 2 weekends away that we were going to there. And I was sudden I knew about this guy and this harmonic frequency, and I was like, well, we're going to try that there, and then we'll go from there and see if we're going to test that out on maybe some other earthworks. And never got a chance to do it, but that is definitely it's definitely a line of research. And you know, the paranormal field right now, um, I don't know, there's so many more people that are interested in it, but I don't know, it seems like it's just hit a dead end. It's really become more of a money making operation where you have a site, they tell you that it's haunted, but who's saying that it's haunted? Generally the owner, who comes up with all these tales of hauntings and what he's heard and what he's done and things that'll stalk you and do that. And it's like, well, of course they're going to say that. They want you to pay $700 for your crew to go in there for an evening to do the paranormal investigation. And, just the places like here in Indiana, there's a place down in Randolph County. It's well, it was basically just an old folks' home. I mean, nothing demonic about it. It was just an old folks' home. But, everybody was there. All the A list of the paranormal teams, on television, they were all there. And I had been there because actually there was a burial mound behind it. And I don't know. It's like, this is BS.
See, I'm
So the
always curious if these things will leave after so many people like mess with an area. Like it seems like these things need something, be it some energy force from people or fear, whatever that energy source is. But I feel like when enough people continuously go to a location and they're constantly like poking and prodding at these things, I've almost just been curious if they eventually kind of just leave or go away or something, because it seems like places are a lot more active, and then once people start regularly frequenting that place, it seems like the experiences start to kind of fizzle out after a while.
Yeah, I don't it's yeah, I watched I don't watch it like back in the day Ghost Hunters, I mean, that was it. That was the only game in town. That was 20 years ago. And I watched an episode of that. There was nothing else on TV and I watched that, and they had a whole crew and they were at this rail yard and all the guys were saying how haunted it was, and man, they had one piece of evidence and that was real sus. And like, wow, they just did a whole hour show for nothing. I mean, it was a lot of stories, like guys telling stories about how haunted it was, which is cool. But as far as them getting anything, they never did. But on the other end of the stick is here you have in Ohio all these ancient mounds that we know are haunted. We know that the spirits are still there. Could be some evil stuff, you'd certainly want to take precautions on that. And, in my book, I mean, it certainly opens up far more stories than what you're going to get on Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or anything like that, because these are places you can go to and they're free and you can do whatever you want up there. But I would have, precaution on it. When, I bought every bit of ghost equipment that you can get. I got SLS and REM pods and, of course, voice recorders. I've got everything, possibly could have for a paranormal investigation. And I had a, Reiki master that was going with me. She was kind of like my light to the Moz. And, I told her, I said, we're not going to do divination. We're not going to ask. We're just going to go there and we're going to monitor and record what's going on more so than actually, looking for them, or, you hear some of those people, saying, I demand you appear or something like that. You don't want to do that. Uh, but we would record, and just doing that and, being bystanders, it was interesting because at the earthworks, when you go inside of them, there's nothing going on. All the spirits are on the outside. That we were able to determine at three different sites that we had explored, that we weren't getting anything inside, but we were getting everything outside. So that sacred ground, they can't get in there. but they do stay on the outside of those. So, anyway, yeah. So, kind of to segue from crappy sites that you have to pay a lot of money to do a paranormal investigation to having free sites available to you that's far more interesting, but probably a little more dangerous. Spirit world with demonic activity, which you're going to certainly get at these earthworks. So I would hope that nothing bad would happen to anybody that would go there. So with great precaution, go check them out.
Say it's one of those things when you're messing with something ancient, it's a lot different than if you're messing with the spirit of somebody who was like murdered in a house, for example. Like when it comes to these things, like you don't potentially know what you're messing with. You might think you're messing with like an ancestral spirit or something, but it could be something a lot heavier and a lot darker than that, of course. And also to kind of follow up on the last thing you had mentioned, that you'd notice that these things don't show themselves on the inside. Question: do you think that that's because of the structure being built itself, or do you think that it's the land itself, that they can't enter that land regardless if the structure was there?
No, and we're going to talk about that is that these structures actually were built to connect the spiritual to the material. The spiritual being the ghost realm, spirit realm, and then of the material being today to being visible now. So the earthworks in themselves were built as a conduit for the summoning of the dead, which was really strange because excuse me, we're going to talk about the one earthworks at Newark, Ohio, the hinge, and that was built. We know just by its solar orientation that it was built as a conduit for the dead to manifest into this world. So, why they're not on the inside though, I don't know. They're on the outside. So, all I can do now, I wish we would have, had the season a couple more months to do some more investigations, which we'll probably get into either later this summer or into the fall. Uh, but once we get to the slides, you'll understand a little bit more once we get to those.
So I know that you have some pictures that you want me to bring up. I don't know if you want me to bring any of these up yet. I know you've kind of been mentioning this earthwork that we're going to dive into today, but yeah, wherever you want to start off with this stuff. I don't know if you want me to bring up the first picture or
Yeah,
not that
okay.
you got here.
Okay, now we were just talking about the Newark earthworks. This is in Newark, Ohio. And what you're seeing is two colors. You're seeing red and you're seeing green. Now, on the top, you're seeing a circle and you're seeing an octagon. And for those who are not familiar with the Newark earthworks, within that circle and octagon is a full size regulation golf course. And all of the holes are within that earthwork of the circle and the octagon, if that gives you any idea of the size. Now, each one of those gateways of the octagon is aligned to a lunar standstill. And this is an 18.6-year journey that the moon does of traveling from north to south. So you have most northerly lunar standstill, most southerly lunar standstill. You have like there's 8 different standstills in this 18 years, and each one of those gateways is aligned to one of those lunar standstills over this 18.6-year period of time. Now, that square within the octagon, the area of that is equal to the other green, and down in the lower right there, that is the Newark hinge. That is a circular earthwork with an interior ditch and outer wall. And I'll talk about the solar orientation in that in a couple slides. But in the ancient world of sacred geometry, connecting the circle and the square was a fusion between the material and the spiritual. And you would represent that not only through this sacred geometry of circles and squares, But the ultimate of the sacred geometer's art was to make the circle and the square have either equal areas, or for the circle's circumference to equal that of the square's sum total of sides, which I'll discuss a little bit further here in a second. So, looking at the square within the octagon, the area of that is equal to the area of the hinge. The red circle attached to the octagon is equal to the square earthwork that's adjacent to the hinge. So here we have two different, even though they are separated, we have circles and squares all with equal areas. And the um, design of this is, again, it's the what the ancient called the sacred marriage, or the sacred marriage of opposites. You would know it, maybe a form of that is the yin yang. So it's this perfect balance of power. So you have both the male, in this case, it's the male sun represented by the circle, and it's the lunar or earth mother that is represented by the square, that also is the four winds, the four cardinal points, and some more earth orientations with that. So here we have at Newark, then, a civilization that, to know how to make a square, a circle, which mathematically you cannot do, because a square you deal with whole numbers, and a circle because you have to do pi and other things to find out the circumference. You're dealing with fractions, but it can be done of squaring the circle, which they would do. So here we have circles and squares, but we also are showing that within these earthworks that they had known pi, square roots of numbers, and yeah, if you attach these correctly, the you actually get a Pythagorean triangle on just the layout of these. And I didn't bring that slide; I should have. So we had the Pythagorean triangle. We have pi, square roots of numbers, and we also know that when they laid this out, they had to know trigonometry. All of these mathematical, um, knowledge. We know that the Amorites, that they had, and these were the people that controlled Babylon from 2000 BC to 1600 BC. And of course, the Amorites, like I mentioned before, was the giants in the Bible. And so here we have mathematics and we have giants in great numbers in the Ohio Valley. So that'll do it with that. I could show whatever we have next coming up. Next slide.
Bring it up here.
Okay. So now this is the hinge. I was saying that that one of the arts of the sacred geometry is either that the circle and the square would have um, in the same area, or if the circumference of the hinge could also equal the sum total of the length of the wall. So in this case, the circumference of the hinge at Newark is 3,700 feet. And then adjacent to that is a square earthwork where each of the walls was 925 feet. So 925 times 4 is 3,700 feet. So that is how we are combining these two earthworks. So not with area, but as with the circumference and the sum total of the size of the walls. So again, knowledge of advanced mathematics to have been able to pull this off.
Just to throw it in there too, just a weird observation since I was mentioning that whole 3, 6, and 9 thing. You got the 3,700, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, actually, never mind. I guess that wouldn't work because that would end up going into 10. But um, kind of continuing on with, I guess, some of the idea with the, trying to figure out how to word this exactly. I'll let you continue on. I'll try to reassess my thoughts here because I had a good question. I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase it exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't done the math on the actual 3,700 feet, Uh, but I do know that these were meant, and so again, what we're dealing with is a spiritual, um, like a spiritual machine almost. That when you would come here, I mean, this was all about the dead, and the mound builders in the Ohio Valley were um, their religion was based on the dead and the spirits of the dead. The burial mounds were not only places of burial, they were places of worship. Where, yeah, there's some where you might only have a few people in a burial mound, but a lot of them, there was a charnel house that was burned, cremations, and then those bodies would be cremated, and then they would cover that with earth, and then they would put another charnel house up. Then at some time, that would be burned down, the body's cremated, and another thing of earth, and another charnel house. So, some mounds would have thousands of people in it. But you would go to a mound and pray for, prosperity and health and, everything that, we would pray for. But you weren't praying to an individual dead or relative, but it was a collective of the dead that would be, determine, your fate in the future. So those mounds are places of worship, but then these earthworks was to be able to transport these almost like portals. I mean, the mound was a portal, and these were like super portals for the dead, as these earthwork combinations, especially when you see a circle and a square together, which happens a lot and in the Ohio Valley, then you know that that particular earthwork was definitely made to manifest the dead into the material world. And that'll be it for that. But anyway, there's the mathematics. Just some more mathematics going on at Newark.
So this is what the question I was going to ask. I was trying to find a good way to kind of phrase it. So, um, as far as a lot of these like advanced mathematic theories and principles that are thrown into building some of this architecture, um, at least do you know offhand like when the quote like discovery of like the Pythagorean theory or any of this stuff happened, so that it can give the listeners kind of a context on why them being aware of this math is so fascinating? Because I know it's like thousands of years probably later that these actual principles were quote discovered, but they were using them as far back as I guess we can date, because we don't even necessarily have like a distinct date on when this stuff was built. Correct?
The earliest carbon from Newark is around 800 BC. We know that the Amorites in Babylon had the Pythagorean triangle, so it's interesting that it's showing up, oh, probably earlier here than in Greece and Pythagorean, probably, sometime, but it's very strange that it would. But yeah, the spacing of the earthworks. Now, what's interesting, because okay, now there's one case. So you'd say, well, could that be serendipitous? Well, probably not. When it comes to math, I mean, what are the odds something is going to fall in line like that for a 3, 4, 5 triangle? However, there is a rectangular earthwork in Winchester, Indiana, and Ball State University has proven that that earthwork was made using two Pythagorean triangles. So now we have it in two different places where the Pythagorean triangle was being used. And you just have to say, well, who was using it? Is this Native Americans? Because Native Americans never really took credit. 100 years ago, Native Americans never took credit for any of the mounds and earthworks in the Ohio River. They all said, from Little Turtle, the Miami Indian, to Cornstalk, the Shawnee Indian, they all said that the mounds and earthworks were there when they had arrived. And then other people like Joseph Brant of the Iroquois and some others said that it was a light skinned people that had come from the East who had built these, and they possessed superior knowledge that the Native Americans just didn't have. I mean, that was their original story, that was their original history. But that doesn't follow the woke narrative, and so it's just like, shut up, Native Americans. We'll tell you what your history is.
That
And you
seems like
built.
it's very reminiscent of a lot of the stuff in South America too. That a lot of these ancient structures, they ask who built them, and the people say, "Oh, we didn't build them; they were here." Like this is reminiscent all across America.
Exactly, and there's a revelation coming out about that. I mean, there was one from L.A. Marzulli, but he's been doing more DNA tests down in South America, and that's about to come out. Now, I can tell you, and this kind of fits, kind of doesn't. It's kind of weird. There's a skull from West Virginia. It dated about 800 AD, which is about 300 years after what's going on in the Ohio Valley. But the skull type was very similar to what you're going to find in the burial mounds, not only in Ohio, but what you would find associated with the people who built Stonehenge over in England, who built hinges just like the hinges over here. Had conical burial mounds with earthworks or ditches around them, just like in Marietta, that now we know is 666 feet in circumference. But that DNA came back European, 800 AD. So there is somewhat of a link of DNA possibly doing that. However, I do not want to get into that at all and open up that can of worms, because in ancient America, the dark side, I put the theory that we're not talking about a race of men, we're talking about a species of men. And these men were a different species than modern humans. And in the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, half of the book is giants that I call Neanderthal hybrids. And the reason I do that is because they had a sloped forehead, they had a prominent brow ridge, massive jaws. Their skull types would be more akin to a Neanderthal than that of a modern human. Some of them had an occipital bun in the back of their head, which is very diagnostic of a Neanderthal skull. And so this hybrid race um, is not, it wouldn't be anything that you would able, because they can tell by your skull what race you are. Something that it's crazy, because a forensic anthropologist, I mean, if they buried you in the backyard and they found your skull in 500 years, they would know your ancestry just by your skull. Now that is being taken out by woke. They're saying like, that's racist. Well, this is science, But now forensic anthropology has been notched as being racist. So it's ridiculous. But anyway, you would not be able to tell these skulls in the Ohio Valley or in England, because they're so far different than modern skulls. And this would be more akin to the biblical line of Genesis 6:4, talking about the giants, when it says there were giants in those days and also after that. When the sons of God saw the daughters of men, giants were born. So this was a hybrid race, half born from fallen angels and half of from modern men. And so that narrative in the Bible would certainly be more true in as far as what these skull types are.
I mean, just to throw it in there too, it almost kind of seems like almost like an idea that's intended to be suppressed, kind of like you're saying with like the whole like woke concept. That just kind of lay a couple pieces out here. First and foremost, when most people like think of giants and what you see in typical folklore stories or throughout movies and stuff, is that usually they're the dumb ones, they're the dim-witted ones. But if you take into consideration this whole aspect of, if you're viewing these things through the Nephilim lens, that they were attuned to occult knowledge, they would have been aware of some of this secret knowledge that people weren't really intended to have, then you're already dealing with a race that is comparably probably more intelligent than the human race, or at least at this time. And also, if you take in consideration maybe the size of like their skulls, if these things are giant, I mean, with a bigger brain, definitely brings in the possibility of them being more intelligent. So again, going back to the whole idea of like in movies that you see giants, or in folklore stories that you see giants portrayed as dumb, it could be an intentional thing that they were trying to kind of like squash out the idea that these things were actually building some of these structures. We're actually doing all this stuff and just kind of try to push it off to the side, because even the suggestion you made about like Stonehenge, I mean, most people obviously kind of dive into like the druid aspect of things, but if you're taking into consideration like a lot of these structures in America, I mean, even the one in Lake Michigan that nobody's really been able to do too much with, that they're calling the Michigan Stonehenge. I mean, it's definitely seems like there's a good possibility that these things could have all been built by something other than what we're assuming that they are, and it is something that's suppressed, because as soon as you start acknowledging giants, then that's just more of the Bible that you have to start taking into consideration. And especially where we're at now with a lot of this biblical research of people actually rediscovering some of these ancient sites, like it seems like now more than ever, we're at a time where we're almost like about to break the wall of people that are looking at the Bible strictly as a fictional story versus the people that are looking at it as like these are diehard facts. Because it's kind of hard to deny any of this stuff when now they're able to say, all right, this is the site that this happened at. This is the site that this happened at. Here's the exact rock that Moses cracked to let the water out. Like, and they can actually find these places now. Like, when people are actually diving that far into this research and they're starting to discover all this like giant stuff, like it seems like it's only so long before the dam's going to break with a lot of this research.
Well, I agree with that. And, you know, um, I go a deep dive into etymology associated with the mounds and earthworks in Ohio. And one of the things is the root from the accounted giant Og in the Bible. And, well, kind of the history of the giants was that they were cave people. It's where we get the word troglodyte and we get the word ogre. So both being slow, cumbersome, dimwit type people. But we also get words that Og was the great eye in the sky, is where we get words like ogle and to be googly eyed. So, when you Google something, I mean, that is a reference to Og, the giant uh, chief of Bashan, who is said to have been about 9 foot. Um, the word cognizant, associated with knowledge. I mean, again, you have that root word Og. And, there's many words that we have today that have a root word Og in it. And, it all goes back to one biblical character. But in the most part, it's an all knowing, all seeing God that these words have that root word of Og from. Yeah, and if you want to do that, there's a whole chapter on etymology of just one giant Og and shows how that was passed along. And it was more evidence that they were in North America, just from different place names that we have with a OG, Og, root word. So, yes, and we're finding out more too, with, trigonometry and Pythagorean squares and pi, square roots. Like, well, you ask the question, Native Americans say that they did not build the mounds, and so why is this fact that they had all of this advanced mathematics being shoved down their throats when it's evident that they didn't? That wasn't their history. Their ancients claimed they didn't. Now there's modern natives that are saying they built the serpent mound, that this earthwork or that earthwork, is part of their ancestry, which, I have some leverage because the Dakota Sioux were in the Ohio Valley the same time these geometric earthworks were being constructed. So it's not completely not Native American history. That would not be true at all because the Dakota Sioux, we know the Mandan, we know the Osage, we know the Oto. We know at least those three tribes were there. So the Akansea, the Kansa, I mean, they were probably all there in the Ohio Valley, and I think they all have the bloodline of these people. When we go to find the original root of this mathematics, we're going to have to go uh, back to Babylon, and we've got a screen up here right now. Okay, now we're back at Newark.
I noticed the the og part in the middle of a poggy sun too. So I'm assuming that that's like another root word right there, like you were mentioning over here
Uh,
on apogee.
Possibly. I mean, I haven't done an etymological research on that word, but it's just a word you always keep it, the back of your head when you see it, and just see if there's any kind of etymological connection with that. But yeah, there is a so many words that have og as their root, as their origin. And like I said, Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley is where I go into a real deep dive on that chapter, along with the numerology and some other things that little more than what we'll talk about today. But uh, um, just to show mathematics, and really it'll get you scratching your head of like how in the world did they do this. So we're looking at the circle attached to the octagon, and we're looking at the hinge there in the lower right. The apogee moon is the smaller moon, and the perigee moon is the largest the moon. Now, the ratio of the apogee and the perigee moon is the same as the ratio of the circle attached to the octagon and the hinge. Now, how did they figure that out? So
This
let's
almost kind of seems like just to throw this part in real quick. You had mentioned the whole idea that they claim that they didn't build these things, and then it got to a point where they almost were like basically claiming that they built these things. It almost kind of seems almost kind of reminiscent of a lot of the stuff in Egypt that when Egyptologists were first going there, they were saying like, oh yeah, these were intended to be tombs. And all the people around were like, no, they were built to represent us, but we don't necessarily know who built them. But after you've done enough of that interrogation, it's kind of like convincing somebody of a crime. You can convince people of a crime that they didn't do after you keep repeating the story into their head. So it seems like there's this facade that's going on around the world where there's some kind of weird portion of history going on here. And rather than actually diving into that, they kind of put this blanket over it where they're like, all right, this is your history. And the people deny it for a while. And then it seems like they get to a point where they just kind of accept it and say, yeah, it's our history. And this is something that pops up all over the world, and
Mhm.
especially in these weird giant locations. Because for everybody that's dived into Egypt, they know how much weirdness there is as far as giants, like giant doorways, giant sarcophaguses. Like it seems to be a reoccurring thing of all of these places that almost seem like giants built them. They like throw something on it and say, all right, this is your history. And again, people eventually just say, oh yeah, it must be our history.
Well, now, now it's woke history. So woke history has no um, footing on the truth. Woke history has its footing in what is politically correct. So the politically correct answer to who built the Newark earthworks is the Shawnee, because the Shawnee were in middle Ohio in the 1700s, even though this was built 1100 years prior to that. You know, that's like going to uh, North Africa and then seeing a Roman ruin in Libya, of ancient Carthage area, Morocco, and that, and say, well, this was built by North Africans. Oh, it looks Roman. Oh no, it's not Roman. These are North Africans built this. Or a similar thing in Germany. Oh, did Germans build this? No, it was Romans. Well, that's racist. What do you mean? What were Germans too stupid to build a Roman like building? You'd be like, well, I'm not saying they're stupid, but this was built by Romans. So that's what we have here. Well, these earthworks are in Ohio. This is where Indians live. Yeah, well, Native Americans didn't build it. Oh, what are you, racist? What, they were too stupid to build it? It's like, I didn't say that. They say they just didn't build it because we have similar earthworks over in England, and it would be certainly more of a tie over there than to anyone that's here. So anyway, that's what we deal with academia, who you watch on the news. I mean, just the whole academic elite who are trying to rewrite history, not based on any facts, but on just a woke agenda of everybody wins. Everybody gets an award. In the competition. So this is just though another example of this, and you look at the Native American canon. And where does this fit in? Where does the sacred geometry fit in? Where does mathematics fit in? Where does lunar fit in? Um, it's even hard with the Dakota. I think a lot of it was lost. I think you would give it closest to them because they continued to bury their dead in mounds. And we know the Ho Chunk were continually to build effigy mounds, much like the ones in Ohio. So we do have some legacy. We have it with platform pipes of the Ho Chunk and the Dakota Sioux. So we do have some artifacts, so we can tie that to the Ohio Valley at that time. So again, I don't want to dismiss that the Dakota Sioux were there and they were a part of this. That these Newark earthworks is as much of their history as anyone. Um,
I mean, it could be
but
definitely a continuation too, because it seems like a lot of this stuff, even in South America, you have this stuff where it seems like it was built one way, and then as it kind of goes up, it seems like it's layers and it's built a totally different way. You know, doesn't mean that it's not their history, but it doesn't mean that they may not have gotten the idea from somewhere else and then it became part of their history.
yes, and I think that was the case in Ohio Valley too. Um, First, you had Amorites here, and they were building and they were doing this, and that was passed on. So we do have a uh, there is an evolution of earthworks. The later it gets, hinges go from, let's say, the hinge here at Newark, Ohio, where the ditch going around it is 13 foot deep, to you later where you're getting more around 100 AD time frame where um, hinges are maybe only 3 foot deep, around the ditch. They go from 210-foot diameter to 250-foot diameter. So there is an evolution. And I think that is as these people intermingled. I think as the Amorites intermingled with the and married into the Dakota, that there was some different building. I mean, they still had hinges, but just a little bit different. So yeah, to your comment, that would be true.
And also, too, before we hop into the next part, just a side question. I know that nobody's really gotten to do too much research with it just because of the location where it's at in Lake Michigan. But at least with some of your research, have you done any comparisons with, the Lake Michigan Stonehenge, or possibly any of like the setup of the structure or anything like that, in comparison to any of your other research?
No, I mean I'm aware of that, and they got a long way to go before they get anybody on board. I mean, it's an interesting theory, but I don't know. I'm not there yet with that site.
Hey, I mean, I'm always curious too if it lines up with like Stonehenge at all, because they, like I said, they call it the Lake Michigan Stonehenge, but I'm curious like how close the structures might actually be, and if there is maybe another structure that might be somewhere in America that seems like it might be relatively close to having the same purpose as the structure that's in Lake Michigan. But I mean, looking at that, I mean, that just shows how back and how ancient this stuff could go, because how long has it been since you've been able to access that point in Lake Michigan? Like, that goes back thousands of years. So, I mean, that just kind of brings a little bit more validity, I think, into how old some of these structures actually are in North America.
Well, the thing about hinges is this. Now, Stonehenge, I mean, the hinge came first, then the stones in the middle. But as hinges evolved in England, they went from having stone circles in the interior of the hinge to having burial mounds within the center of a hinge. And at Mound State Park, all the hinges there, mound in the middle. Cambridge City, Indiana, mound in the middle. There's 4 or 5 hinge sites in Ohio, mound in the middle. So we do have provenance of mounds in the middle of a hinge in England. Um, and then that shows up here. So when we're looking at Stonehenge, we're looking at megalithic era. And this is after that. And so after the megalithic era, even in England, they continue to build hinges. However, they're no longer having stonework, but the stones are being replaced by mounds. And the mound in the center, because they were oriented to a solar event, was acted as a solar marker as well as a burial.
And just a kind of a weird thought that I want to throw in, at least for like Stonehenge. I mean, usually the theory on it is that the Druids built it, but kind of connecting full circle into some of the research that you're suggesting here. Druids, you think of a lot about that with like the whole serpent cult idea. The whole serpent cult idea goes back to, of course, like I feel like the biblical idea of the serpent and knowledge. So even like the Stonehenge connecting in through like the Druids, if they potentially built it, I mean, I still think that it's possible that they still could have gotten that knowledge through the chain from this same race or this same group or these giants that you're referring to.
You're absolutely right. See, the Druid Celtic religion was learned from the giants. It had its basis, you know, 2500 BC. I mean, everything Druid, the Druid gods. Um, and that is really going to come to fruition here on these next slides.
I guess with that one, I'll bring up the next slide.
Yes. Okay, now we've been talking about the hinge here for the last hour. Now, this is the Newark hinge. So we're looking into the gateway, we're looking west. You see the gateway, and then you see the ditch going around. You see a little bit of the outer wall there going to the left and to the right. Now we're looking at the sun. This is October 31 sunset. This is Samhain. So this is the day when the veil between the living and the dead are at its thinnest. We celebrate it as Halloween. It was an ancient Celtic Druid holiday. It has its roots back into biblical times with the Amorites and Canaanites. Canaanites and Amorites were actually the same people. So here we have the earthwork. It is aligned to October 31. And I was talking earlier that paranormal investigation is that they're not on the inside of this earthwork. You'll lose them in when you go into that gateway. But on the outside of that gateway, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of activity, and there's no more activity than on October 31st. But then the solar opposite of October 31st is May 1st, which is Beltane. Um, and that is Bel, or has a reference to Baal. That was the Canaanite god. And it is with that we can trace the first adherence to May 1 was with the Canaanites slash Amorites, same people. That is where that began, and then of course it was certainly adapted by the Druids and the Celts over in England, and then here it is in Ohio. So in a way, when you go to Ohio, you go to this earthwork. I mean, this is like living history, where you can go on May 1, you can go on October 31st. This is you could you could go to a Halloween party or put on a costume, but you can actually live it right here. And I am real excited about doing a paranormal investigation this October 31st. And we'll be standing out that gateway watching the sun come down. And even if it's cloudy and we're not able to see the sun notch like the way it is right there, it's still going to be crazy. And so I plan on doing a paranormal investigation and would invite whoever to come out October 31. And I think it's going to be the biggest paranormal investigation and reveal that this country's ever seen. So there it is. And there's just no denying that that isn't aligned to October 31.
And just to throw it in here too, because I was going to throw it in a little bit earlier in the show, but I feel like with paranormal investigating, as you kind of mentioned, it seems like it's kind of gotten to this stagnant point, and I feel like part of that is the fact that we're on the precipice of being able to discover a lot of new things, but the thing that's holding us back is a matter of not having the right technological advancements as far as the equipment goes to prove something to somebody that doesn't believe in this stuff. Because with a lot of like the paranormal stuff, it's firsthand sightings, cold temperatures, different voices and stuff, like readings and stuff you get. But for somebody that doesn't want to believe, they're going to look for any reason to not believe any of this type of stuff. But at least for when you go and do this investigation, to try to bring back some evidence to try to possibly prove to the non-believers, what type of equipment and what type of protocol are you hoping to try to do for this to hopefully try to document some stuff to try to bring some more validity to people that may not believe that there's anything weird going on with the stoneworks and the earthworks?
Well, in the few investigations that I did, um, you know, we were getting multi-layered uh, uh, results. I mean, so we was getting stick figures on the SLS at the same time the RIM pod's going off. At the same time, we're hearing things, on a voice recorder. So it wasn't just one piece of evidence, but it was layers of evidence all happening at the same time, which you generally don't see on a paranormal program.
Yeah, that's an awesome response. If you're getting multiple layers at once, usually it's like one, two, sometimes if you're lucky. But if you're getting like three, four layers, like that's for a paranormal investigator, that's gold right there.
Well, I mean, you have to realize, when you see this circle, and we know adjacent to that is a square earthwork, that that the whole meaning of this is the moving from the material to the spiritual. And then you add on that here we have an alignment on October 31, Samhain, which is because of this veil between the living and the dead being at its thinnest, that is why this whole thing was built. So wherever you go, or whatever you watch in the paranormal field, they're never going to have anything, anything at all, even comes close to achieving, that a site that was to built for the paranormal. This is a paranormal site. It was constructed for paranormal activity, and there's no other place like this in the world. And so that really makes it exciting. That which when we were there in November and part of December, and then we ran into the coldest January ever, or the last 30 years, which kind of rough on electronic equipment when it's 10 degrees outside.
On top of
So
energy drain from anything weird going on.
yeah, I mean everything was against us on that. So we were waiting to push that down the road when it got a little warmer. But there's a lot of sites that they overgrow so much in the summer months that you're always best to go during the winter. But there are plenty of sites like Serpent Mound, um, here at the Newark Earthworks. I mean, they're mowed. Well, they were mowed. Now the Ohio handed these earthworks off to UNESCO. So now it's a global site. So it's all run by a bunch of foreigners. So what is going to be the fate of this earthwork? Is it going to be mowed during the summer? Is the circle and octagon that had a golf course in the middle of it, and so it was perfectly manicured. Of course, the whole interior was mowed and the banks were mowed. It was kept in pristine condition. And, is UNESCO going to do that? I'm kind of doubting that they do. I think it's all going to overgrow. It's going to be a big grassy mess of a field in the middle of the circle and octagon. And it was just a huge mistake. Why would Ohio hand over our history like that to the globalists? So big mistake. Sad to see, um, that they said like, well, once it's that, it's like a world destination. It's like, well, of course it is. But it would even have been more so if you would have promoted the fact that pi and square root uh, and trigonometry was used in its construction. You wouldn't have needed to hand it off to foreigners to run your site. If you would have done the work yourself. So that was kind of their fail. And you're certainly not going to. So this is my discovery right here. The only place you're going to see this is here. This is not open knowledge right now. So the listeners here and people watching, this is the first time this is really being revealed that the solar alignment at this hinge. And it's something that you're not going to see academia, you're not going to see the Ohio History Connection, you're not going to see any of them try to promote or anything because this completely goes against the paradigm of a Native American work because they're nowhere in Native American, South or North America is May 1, October 31 recognized these solar events. This aren't part of their religious canon. So it's just more evidence that this was built by a people that had come here. So there it is, October 31. Hope to see everyone there. And I have one more image, the solar opposite Beltane.
Just to bring it up too, I mean, you said that they might end up turning this place into a giant field if they don't maintain it. But even on the flip side of it, I mean, you could end up having the same scenario that happened to the Serpent Mound where they try to clean it up, quote, and they add new landscaping to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's actually supposed to be some type of like a light anomaly or something that's supposed to happen at the Serpent Mound. And didn't they build like they put like a bunch of trees or something like that up near the head so you don't actually end up seeing this sun anomaly, or they did something with the landscaping that makes it so that it doesn't have that original view that you would have gotten of this thing, on top of the fact that everything with the Serpent Mound, they try to deny any of this weird history. And I've heard of a bunch of people that have gone there trying to film, and they ask what they're trying to film about. They tell them that they're digging into this type of stuff, and they won't even let them film or be on the property. Like, they seem like they're completely trying to cover it up. And I would not be surprised even the slightest bit if the same thing happened with this place as the Serpent Mound, where they do take care of it, but they cover some stuff up in the process of trying to landscape it.
Well, on June 21st, the summer solstice sunset, they have like a powwow there. Um, they have a powwow there at the thing, and I guess you can go and you can see it. No, there's nothing obstructing because it's on a high table of land, and that table just juts out. So there's really nothing to obstruct it. So I believe you can see it. You can still go and see the sunset. Now, what you can't see, but you can see the remnant of, that is that within the egg of the serpent, um, there was a standing stone, megalithic standing stone that they pushed over the bluff. But if you go down the bottom of the bluff, you can still see it. So the standing stone that was in the egg that actually would have been the thing that would have thrown the shadow back over the serpent man, you can still see it down in the at the bottom of the bluff, and there's a trail that goes down there. And I have photos of that and Nephilim Chronicles: A Travel Guide to the Ancient Ruins in the Ohio Valley. I think that's it in that book. I have photographs of it, but if you do go down there and just kind of line yourself up with the head, you will see this megalithic standing stone down there. Uh, so I'm not sure, but I've not been there for June 21st of what they're doing. Maybe they're blocking it off, so because you need to go right down the middle of it if you were going to get a photo, and I don't see a whole lot of photos. surprisingly, of people that are there and showing the alignment. So there might be something to what you're saying, that they block that off so the sun sets, but you can't get yourself lined up with the head to actually get the photo. They might do that. I don't know.
I mean, even if it does cause some type of weird anomalies where people start seeing like shadow figures or anything like that, if they turn it into a tourist location, of course, there's two sides of tourism. There's like the dark tourism and then there's like standard tourism. And if they're just going for standard tourism, they're not trying to scare people away from this location. So, I mean, I don't know how far the rock is or if it looks like it was intentional or if it was done at some point in the far past where it had nothing to do with these people. But I don't know, it just still seems like there's something weird to it. And if they were trying to make this site go back to its original historical view, I mean, how many times have you seen them like completely try to rebuild different structures and stuff? Like, I don't feel like it would be out of the question for them to, attempt at least to try to put the stone back in place.
Well, now it's the thing though. If they put the stone in the middle of the egg, what is that? It's megalithic. And is megalithic Native American? No. Therefore,
So it
that
seems
stone
like
will
an
never.
intentional cover up.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Because if you put that stone up and you make that stone as your alignment stone, then that's megalithic. That's not Native American. If it's not Native American, that'd go against the paradigm that Native Americans build everything. So it's never going to happen. That's why I say, modern archaeology and has nothing to do with science. It's all about a political agenda. So you just have to ask yourself, does this fit their political agenda? And if it is no, then you know that that information is not going to be released. And I know they're not real happy about even. And there's some academics that still deny that the Serpent Mound is aligned to the summer solstice, even though it is aligned, because those solar alignments aren't within the religious canon of Native Americans. So when you put that in there, then that creates that doubt that this is a Native American site, which they don't want. And so that is why, I've not been there for summer solstice, but then I do find it odd that I'm not seeing a lot of pictures either. So that might get blocked off because, again, okay, let the people that come here believe that, but we don't want to disseminate with photos of this thing occurring because that's going to create doubt that this is a Native American site. So there might be something to that.
I mean, even bringing up what I mentioned earlier with this whole idea about like rubbing rocks on these methylitic structures and actually creating this like pitch sound frequency. I mean, if you have this thing in place and that may play a part in some of this stuff, I mean, that might even be somewhat of the key to activate some of this stuff that, we are getting some strange effects that are caused from these things. But, if we figured out exactly what the sound fit pitch frequency whatever that's supposed to reverberate through this is, I mean, who knows what could happen. I mean, it could go into like hyperblast mode and have some
Oh, yeah.
undeniable things happen.
At the Serpent Mound and at the hinges of experimenting with sound, I mean, that is a fascinating venue of research to test out. Now, I can tell you this, that at the Serpent Mound, as meek, that it may seem as a site, it's some of the things happen there are crazy. One, I've gone there 2 times, and there was witches' covens there, and they're a little creepy. A gaggle of like 10 women, and they're chanting all this stuff, and um, but there have been two documented cases. L.A. Marzulli and in his In Search of the Nephilim video series, there was a guy that went out and he went out on he stood on the mound, which you're not supposed to do, but something just cold cocked him, knocked him to the ground, wouldn't let him up. And he was down there and praying, and he was down there for a while. And eventually, it let him go. but he tells his tale, and they have some really good images of what he went through. But there is another where there was some people standing outside of the serpent. It was a group. It looks like about 40 people, and this woman, I mean, she is just cold cocked. You just see her head snap. I mean, some sort of entity just knocked her out. And I've heard some tales about other people saying that the tail that coils around 3 times, that that's some sort of portal or something. But there are some people that have experienced some violent occurrences at the Serpent Mound. We don't, in the paranormal world, though, you'll see people say something pushed me, something did that or that, and
The typical
um,
3 scratch marks too.
oh yeah, yeah, please on that. Um, yeah, always where you kind of. So I watch the shows and be like, and I'll reach on my back and go, I could do that. Um,
It's the Holy
yeah, I'm not
Trinity.
really because they're
Unholy
mocking,
Trinity.
they're mocking Jesus. Like a 3 scratches. I mean that. Yeah, I mean everything. You're gonna have a little BS on there, and somebody might have been scratched. I'm not gonna completely eliminate that it could happen, but
I mean, even if you get
like,
scratched, though, even if you take the human hand and you scratch your back, more than likely you're going to have these 3 dominant fingers. So even with the 5-finger
yeah,
scratch, there's still going to be those 3 dominant fingers.
yeah, yeah. And then the paranormal expert always pops up. Is like, well, 3. It's they're mocking Christ. Like, oh brother, you know, you know. But anyway,
If you start seeing 4 fingers, that's when I'd be a little bit more surprised, maybe, because then you could go into the whole
yeah,
6-finger Nephilim idea that, 4 fingers and then you still have the 2 that, aren't dragging.
yeah, just yeah. It's that's what I say about paranormal stuff. Like, well, boys, we're not getting a whole lot of evidence here at this site. It's like, do we do it? It's like, yeah, see if she'll take a scratch. Like, ma'am, we really need to scratch you.
Just
We're
make sure you're off
we're
camera.
yeah, we're gonna pay you $500. This is what we're doing. We have a nurse. It won't get infected, but it's like we really need to raise some bumps on your back because this show is going nowhere. And so, yeah, I think that happens sometimes. Uh, but at the Serpent Mount, I mean, that was real. You see it on tape. You just see this woman getting hit, and this guy, I mean, he has his story too of getting knocked down on there. And I talked to somebody else that had a problem there. Now, what's interesting, I go into this too in Ancient America: The Dark Side, is that um, see the site where the Serpent Mound is. There was a meteor that hit there like 20 million years ago. So actually, it is in a bowl created by this meteor. And there is some sort of mineral. Is it iridium or something like that? That's in the soil there, and it's around the serpent mound, and it's within that mound. But back in the day, 150 years ago, there was carrier pigeons that would migrate by the millions. They would say they would so many they would black out the sky, and in their brain, they have a little thing that lets them migrate. But this iridium, I believe it is, messes with that. They're,
It's something with
they're
magnetism, I believe, right? That's what they use to
yeah,
navigate.
yeah. And this iridium messes with that, and they would say that these carrier pigeons would just be circling this serpent mound for like days until some of them were just dropping out of the sky. And eventually they would figure it out. Like the lead one, the lead bird that was leading everybody would get out. But they would say that it would just fly around, which you can imagine was happening like 2,000 years ago as well, which would even have made this place even more magical. So,
Just to throw it in there too, um, this impact that happened, is there Was there anything left from this impact? Like, is there a possibility that this stone that's supposed to sit at the base of the tail may have actually been like a fragment from this meteor from thousands of years ago?
Well, I've seen this stone. I mean, I don't think so. It might have been. That's possible. I never really thought about that. It's possible. But
Because
yeah,
I mean,
it's
if that's
down
the
there.
case, it could be a complete key component to this. Because I mean, if it has something
Oh,
going on with it
yeah.
magnetically, I mean that if it's put in place, like I mean, who knows what the possibilities could be for this mound?
That would be something to do. Yeah, to see if a magnet sticks to it. Yeah, there's some tests you definitely could do on that stone. And it's not that hard to find. I mean, you go to the bottom of the hill, you can see where the edge of the bluff is, where the serpent head is, because it comes out to a point. It's right underneath it. And it's a big, long, giant stone that's been cut. It's a pillar of stone. So, yeah, that would be really cool to see. I don't know that anyone has ever done that, but I guess that's a possibility
Hey, if you
that
ever go there and you try it out, you'll have to give me an update and let me know if anything happens with it or if it ends up being magnetic.
yeah, yeah. There's always so much. I've been doing this for next year will be 30 years. And it's surprising just the evolution of what and knowledge, and then which opens up new questions to investigate, which now is the paranormal world, that's associated with this, which I've actually known about from about the first month that I began this in like 96, and went to my first site, and with a friend of mine, Kathy, and we had been to a couple mound sites here in northern Indiana because I was going to shoot. This started out as a short documentary film. I didn't know this was going to be the rest of my life. Um,
Is
but
that what
we
this
would
clip
go
is from?
constantly. No, no, I'm sorry about that image. This is some drone guys that were hired on May 1. So this is the morning, May 1st. This is Beltane sunrise. And this is the drone shot. So now we're looking east. So we're looking through the gateway, and then you can see the sun aligned to the gateway. So it's going to come up on the gateway on May 1st. However, you see there in the middle, there's like a building. That is Ohio Historical Collection built their visitor center for the henge, which they don't call it a henge, but they build it in the gateway. Idiots.
Purposeful again, like pushing that rock over.
Yeah, yeah, like just so clueless and stupid. Um, there it is, right in the gateway. I mean, it'd be like going to Stonehenge to see the summer solstice sunrise, but somebody would build a fish and chips in the gateway, and that's the Ohio. That's the fish and chips right there in the gateway, right where it should not be, because the Ohio Historical Connection. I swear you have to have a some sort of mental deficiency to work there. Uh, so that is their museum of stupidity right there, right in the gateway for May 1. Now, I mean, you can certainly see the sunrise on May 1. It will clear that building pretty quick. It'll just come up over onto the right hand corner of that building. But the alignment it's there. But of the two dates to see, October 31 was far more impressive of the sun setting, because sometimes the setting sun is a little bigger. I think under different conditions, I was there and the sun was looking kind of small. And it has to do with, pollutants in the air, and, humidity levels, how much water vapor of what the sun, if it's going to look smaller or bigger on any particular date. On here, this date, It was very clear sky, very dry air, and so the sun was, relatively small. But that's it. I mean, clearly, you can see it um, there, and it's aligned, just like October 31st, aligned to the gateway. So this is Beltane. So why do we have an earthwork in Ohio that has Pythagorean triangles, circles and squares that are the ancient geometric art, that's all old world religion, advanced mathematics, Beltane, Samhain. Um, so this is all that's happening here at this one site. We got, all sorts of geometric earthworks across Ohio. So there's a lot going on other than here, but this is just a really good way to prove a point, if you will, of like, if you can walk away from this and say, yeah, it's really something to that. I don't know that this is a 100% Native American site, even though I did say that the Dakota Sioux were involved here. It didn't originate with the Dakota Sioux. It originated with the biblical Amorites, and this is their site. And it was the biblical Amorites who gave us the Druid religion, the Celtic religion. So it all plays out here.
Say, I feel like you've probably done more research in depth with this stuff than a lot of people have, connecting some of the stuff in America to a lot of the stuff even in Europe. And again, it just seems like this reoccurring tale of, all right, we're in this area and we reuse this and we've told these stories about us reusing it, but as time goes on it turns into telephone and then eventually becomes, oh yeah, we are building them all along. And people forget that, when people first started trying to investigate this stuff, that the people around there were saying like, yeah, we didn't do this. But that seems to be forgotten in the past because, like you said, it's all woke manipulated history in order to fit the current narrative and the current perspective. And if anything breaks away from that, rather than putting all focus and effort on that like they should to try to rediscover something completely new, people just want to stick with the paradigm and they'll just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
There you go. There it is. So, if I said Native Americans didn't practice Beltane, you'd say, well, why wouldn't they? Why couldn't they? So that's racist. Why are you saying if they didn't do it, then that's racist? Now they don't practice it now, but maybe they practice it then. Okay. And what about the mathematics? Well, they just say they forgot. When asked the Native Americans, like, well, you had all this mathematics and all that. Well, what happened to all that? Oh, we just forgot about it. And it's like, okay, that's all right. But anyway, that's it. Yeah, you're just saying, yeah, just change it. Force it down their throat. This is the new truth. If you don't believe the new truth, it's the fallback response. That's racist. So there we have. So you have the opportunity after looking at this information that I've shared with you, and mathematics doesn't lie, uh, that there is that possibility that these are not strictly Native American sites, but this is an old world religion that was transplanted here by another people and another people that happen to be giant in size.
I mean, just to continue on too, I mean, it doesn't take away any validity that, maybe these people eventually did do it at some point, but you would definitely have to acknowledge the fact that there is a possibility that even if you did think that they built some of these structures, that they could have still learned it from somewhere else.
Right, and that's what we're getting to. Because, like I said, we know the Dakota Sioux were down there, who are never given any credit for their time in the Ohio Valley. Um, but no, they did. They learned it from another people. Um, they intermingled and bred with these other people. I believe that is why the Sioux were building mounds until the Dakota Sioux until historic times. That the Sioux were very large in some cases. I think is just from this bloodline. So I think there's something to that. Um, so no, not to completely deny them, but you have to recognize that there was a root of knowledge that was brought here and exchanged. So that's what we're trying to point out today. And I believe that this is no other than the Amorites that are mentioned in the Bible as one of the accounted giant tribes in the Bible that we know 100% that the Amorites had advanced mathematics from the tablets that they've left in the Bidding Salmon. Actually, the some of the tablets, Babylonian tablets from this period of the Amorites, they said that their advanced trigonometry almost surpasses what we have today. So that gives you an idea of just how advanced mathematically they were. And then all of a sudden it shows up here. So there we have the connection.
And I mean, not to even throw in even the aspect of almost every single Native American tribe does have stories about giants being there. So it's not like, we're making claims about giants being in America with no backing to it. Like, even from the native perspective, there's endless stories about them having interactions with giants. So, I mean, it's one of those things that you can only deny it for so long when there's just this reoccurring thing that you're constantly seeing in this area.
Oh yeah, it's 100%. This revisionist history has just been in the last 30, 40 years. But up until then, no, they all said that the mounds and earthworks were there when they arrived. Now we're talking more of the Algonquins, so the Shawnee, the Miami, the Delaware, Potawatomi, those tribes who I don't think when these were built were even here. I think they began in Canada. And this was Dakota Sioux. I've always believed the Iroquois may have had a part in northern parts of Ohio and northern Indiana that they were through here. Um, and when they've done DNA studies of burial mounds, they said in the report, they said that there was some ties to the Algonquins. Some. Well, what an erroneous word that is. There was some Algonquin DNA. See, that doesn't make any sense. We know that Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, she's got like 2% Native American blood. She has some Native American blood. So 2%, and that's what we're dealing with. And that 2%, when she did her report um, of this DNA, was saying, "Yeah, see, there it is. There's the DNA evidence." Like, your DNA evidence is a, and she said some. She didn't even give the percentage, which would give you an idea how low the percentage was. But it was a way to word it where she could go, "Oh, see, there you go. There it is. There's the DNA. There's the match. There's the connection." There was no connection. Some DNA. You know, if you go out to dinner and say, "I have some money in my pocket," where do you think you're going to dinner? You're probably going to McDonald's. Yeah, I have some money. Oh, I have some money. Should we just run into the grocery store and buy some chicken salad and a loaf of bread? Yeah, that's some. Some is not. I mean, if it was a major amount, I mean, that certainly would have been released, but it wasn't. They thought that they were going to find this in this DNA study, and they didn't. And really, there was nobody that matched up. No Iroquois. They said zero Cherokee, which I was surprised. Zero Iroquois. They weren't. But
Say
see,
that.
what they don't do is they don't test it against a global database. They only test it with Native Americans. So if it was tested with a global database, now L.A. Marzulli is working on that as we speak, and I believe that Revelation is supposed to be coming out pretty soon. But he has some DNA that's coming out that may answer some more questions of what we currently know. So, yeah, they're working on that.
Say, and hopefully we'll have to come back around for a round three at some point. Hopefully, when at least after you get to check out this place, hopefully on October 31st, and you'll have to bring back a report of hopefully what you guys end up experiencing there.
Well, yeah, we should plan on maybe a couple weeks or so before October 31st, so more like the beginning of October, um, because I would really like to see every Celt, witch, druid there at that earthwork on that day. So, I'd like for this really to be, in Thornborough, Henge, and England. I mean, there's cars in the middle of it. I mean, it's huge. I mean, you could put cars in the middle of this, but you wouldn't want to do that. But there's thousands of people that are inside of this hinge for October 31. And I would like to see something like that at at Newark. So, um, you could still do your sunset at Newark and then go off. But I mean, certainly could incorporate Halloween parties and everything else with that. So maybe I need to get a hold of a lot more people to pull this off. So yeah, so I'll be looking to promote that in October. So let's shoot for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can shoot for the beginning of October, get people all amped up for the spooky season, and also, like you mentioned, get some more people over to the site. So, yeah, we can definitely set up for the beginning of October, and maybe we can even touch base a little bit after, at least, too, to figure out what ended up happening after the event, of
Yeah.
course. Always an
Okay.
excuse for a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's gonna be fun, and like I said, it's like you can go to Halloween or you can live it. October and at the Newark Henge, you can live it, and that's why this massive earthwork was built. It was built to for this veil between the living and the dead at being its thinnest and to manifest the dead there. So it could be just really crazy. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing any and all of you listening there as well.
Well, I guess before we give out some more information on that and let everybody know where they can find your book and possibly even contact you online, we first have to wrap up with some words of wisdom. So, if there was any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
Well, I think the paradigm don't trust anyone, especially don't trust academia. Look for your own truth, and that will be the real truth, but trust your own instincts on what's true and what is not. And it's no more so than what are we've talked about here this evening.
Well, those are some great words of wisdom to live by. I'm definitely somebody that feels that everybody should find the answers themselves and don't just take somebody off face value because at the end of the day, you never know what somebody's agenda or motive might be for the information that they're giving you. So you have to make sure that you get your validity to make sure that you can make that assumption on your own, of course. And if anybody wanted to possibly come to this event, which we will definitely make sure that we come back around to in October to remind everybody about it, or if they wanted to pick up your book, Ancient America, The Dark Side, or possibly even contact you online for any reason whatsoever, where can people find your work? Where can people find your book? And where can people find you?
All my books are on Amazon, including Ancient America: The Dark Side. Yeah, more of a deep dive into the geometrics and numerology and all that. Of the earthworks are within that book, or the Nephilim Chronicles: Fallen Angels, for more on the numerology. But everything's on Amazon. I'm on Facebook. If you want to go in there, friend me, whatever, you can do that. But yeah, I've got Ancient America. It's 14.99, and it's well worth it. If you want to go to the burial mounds in Ohio, I have a travel guide also that has all of the mounds that are address restricted. Uh, if you go to Ohio to see the mounds, if you don't have my travel guide, for every mound or earthwork site you go, you'll pass by three. Most of them are hidden, they're address restricted. But I lifted that veil of secrecy in that academia has no right to tell any American what history is available for them to see and what is not. And so those directions, photos, histories of all the sites are in my book. So just fighting the man at the university, uh, bunch
Hey,
of
what do they
idiots.
say though? All the
Uh,
pseudoscientists end up becoming the most recognized scientists through time because it seems like all of the people that make all of these claims in their time that seem like they're completely ridiculous. You end up looking back at them 100 years later and you realize that that one person that was looked at as the pseudoscientist was the person that was right all along. And they're the ones that end up actually having their theories get remembered eventually. So hopefully that's what ends up happening today is a lot of these people that are being considered, quote, pseudoscientists will actually end up being some of the most remembered minds of our time.
yeah, so don't wait 100 years, folks. Go in October. Now you know at the Hinge, um, the actual official parking lot is not very big. So yeah, you're going to be Ubering in, or there's neighborhoods around there, and yeah, you're really going to have to work on the logistics. But
Carpool,
don't
always a
think
good option.
well, yeah, I don't think they even allow buses in there. But no, you're just going to have to Uber. You're going to have to Uber in. You're going to have to park in the neighborhoods. There's a drive that goes around the earthwork, and there's houses through there. And yeah, there's some crazy paranormal stuff that happens all around those houses. I was with somebody, and they had gone to investigate one of the homes that's opposite, like I said, on the outside of the earthworks. But oh yeah, voices, stuff was flying around the house, breaking against walls. It was crazy. Yeah, I mean, some real crazy things. I went to the house, and thank God those people weren't home. Yeah, was not in mood for it that day. And they went up there. It's like, I got to go. You know, this minister, he's like, these people are freaking out. And it's like, I got to go and pray and try to get rid of this demon. And it's like, well, why am I with you? You know, at the time, I wasn't really doing paranormal investigations at the time. But anyway, yeah. So, yeah, hope to see everyone there and wish everybody a good night then.
Well, I really appreciate you making the time to come on today. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And again, I'm really looking forward to our next round when we hit it in October.
All right, Shane. Good talking with you.